What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Cricket Ovation 3 and the Motorola Moto G Stylus 4G 2022. Now, when the Moto G Stylus 2022 originally came out, going for around $300 factory unlocked, this phone was in a completely different price range than something like the Cricket Ovation 3. But at this point, now that the phone is almost a year old, with the deals Cricket's been offering lately, you can actually get these phones for around a similar price. So in this video, we're going to be going over the similarities and differences between the two to give you a better idea of whether or not it might make sense for you to spend a little money and get something like the Moto G Stylus, or if you should spend potentially nothing and get something like the Cricket Ovation 3 instead. Now, as always, if you want to learn more about either phone, including pricing and availability and all that, definitely check out the links in the description, but otherwise, let's get into it. So with the Cricket Ovation 3, we're getting a 6.82-inch IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 246, and an aspect ratio of 20.5:9. With the Moto G Stylus, we're getting a 6.8-inch IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 396, and a 20.5:9 aspect ratio as well. And keep in mind, the Moto G Stylus also has a 90Hz refresh rate, whereas the Cricket Ovation 3 has a standard 60Hz. So on one hand, when it comes to size and dimensions, these phones are pretty much the same, both being about 6.8 inches with 20.5:9 aspect ratio, so really tall and narrow form factors too. So that's definitely a great thing. But with the Moto G Stylus, the image quality we're getting here is quite a bit better, with a 1080p resolution versus only 720p. The image is going to be a lot sharper, and with the 90Hz refresh rate, with the Moto G Stylus, the movement on the screen is going to be a little bit faster and smoother, making the phone feel a little bit more premium to use. So overall, if you're just doing stuff like reading, web browsing, occasional social media use, and things like that where the image quality doesn't really matter a whole lot, then honestly the Cricket Ovation 3 is going to be perfectly fine. But if you are doing stuff like watching videos, looking at photos, playing games, things where you really do want a nice looking image, then the Moto G Stylus is probably going to be worth it for you. Now when it comes to storage, there is quite a difference here. With the Cricket Ovation 3, we're getting 32GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the Moto G Stylus, we're getting 128GB with microSD card expansion as well. So between the two, the Moto G Stylus clearly has a huge advantage, having quadruple the storage of the Cricket Ovation 3. And honestly, for that matter, 32GB is not only significantly less, but honestly, I feel like it's not even going to be enough for most people. At this point in 2023, I feel like 32GB really is just not enough. I mean, with stuff like apps, the system, and just files in general getting larger and larger as time goes on, unless you're really doing hardly anything on this phone, even with microSD card expansion, the storage is going to fill up pretty quickly, because while microSD card expansion is great, there's some things where it's just better to use the internal storage itself. So overall, unless you're really doing the bare minimum with your phone, with so much more storage, the Moto G Stylus, of course, is going to have a huge advantage. For security features, both phones do have face unlock, and they also both have fingerprint scanners. With the Cricket Ovation 3, it's right here on the back, and with the Moto G Stylus, it's right here on the power key. But starting with the Cricket Ovation 3, let's try them out. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the Moto G Stylus. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see there, real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, both phones do have face unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. For the camera setups, with the Cricket Ovation 3, we got a water drop notch for the front-facing camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a 13 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. So surprisingly, for such an entry level phone, the Cricket Ovation 3 has pretty much all the features, including an ultra wide camera and a macro camera. So definitely not bad. Now with the Moto G Stylus, we got a nice looking hole punch design for the front facing camera. This camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera that doubles as a macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So as far as the general features go, both phones have pretty much everything, including an ultra wide camera and a macro camera, so definitely great to see there. But that being said, when it comes to photo quality, the Moto G Stylus is going to be significantly better. So if you're taking a lot of pictures and that's really one of the main things you're doing with your phone, and you want the best quality between the two, then yeah, the Moto G Stylus is going to be a much better choice. But that being said, if you're really just taking a few photos every now and then, and you don't really need amazing quality or anything, but you still want things to look decently nice, then the Cricket Ovation 3, while again not being nearly as good as the Moto G Stylus when it comes to quality, is still going to get the job done just fine. When it comes to RAM and processor, with the Cricket Ovation 3, we're getting 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio A25 processor, and with the Moto G Stylus, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G88. And again, I want to point out, this phone in my hand is not the Moto G Stylus 5G, that's actually a completely different phone. This is only a 4G phone. Now for the overall performance, while on one hand, the Cricket Ovation 3 for really basic activities like web browsing, social media, stuff like that, and more occasional use, is still going to be perfectly fine. The Moto G Stylus, while still not being a super fast phone itself, is going to be quite a bit faster than the Cricket Ovation 3. So if you're going to be on your phone a little bit more, and maybe you're doing slightly more demanding activities like mobile gaming, for example, then in that case, you will get a significantly better experience with the Moto G Stylus. But again, if you're really using your phone for more of the bare minimum, and you're not going to be on it a whole lot, then in that case, while the Moto G Stylus is technically a lot faster, if you're really not doing a whole lot, the Cricut Ovation 3 is honestly all you're really going to need. Now, I did run Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both phones, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see here, while the difference isn't really super dramatic, the Moto G Stylus is still significantly faster. So again, if you want the faster phone between the two, maybe you're going to be on your phone a little bit more, then in that case, definitely go with the Moto G Stylus. But again, if you're really not doing a whole lot, the Cricut Ovation 3 is going to be perfectly fine. For the batteries, with the Cricut Ovation 3, we're getting a 4000 mAh battery, and with the Moto G Stylus, we're getting a 5000 mAh battery. So while on one hand, the Cricut Ovation 3 definitely doesn't have a bad battery, in fact, in most cases, it's probably going to be good enough for most people. If the battery life is really a priority for you, the Moto G Stylus with a 5000 mAh battery is still going to have significantly better battery life. So if that is a priority for you, then definitely keep this in mind. Now for the software, with the Cricut Ovation 3, we are getting Android 12, whereas with the Moto G Stylus, this phone, or at least the one in my hand that I did get factory unlocked through Motorola, only has Android 11. I'm not 100% sure why, but for some reason, the regular 4G version of the Moto G Stylus doesn't have the best software support, whereas with the Moto G Stylus 5G, it's quite a bit better. But regardless, at least for the purpose of this comparison, the Cricut Ovation 3 does have a slightly newer software. When it comes to other features, one surprising advantage the Cricut Ovation 3 has is that this phone does have NFC, whereas the Moto G Stylus unfortunately doesn't. So if you like to use contactless mobile payment services, basically tap and pay, then you will get that advantage with the Cricut Ovation 3. On the other hand though, the Moto G Stylus, as the name suggests, does actually have a stylus, whereas the Cricut Ovation 3 of course doesn't. So if you do want a phone with a stylus, the Moto G Stylus is going to be one of your only options. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now it's pretty clear here that in almost every way, the Moto G Stylus is a significantly better phone. Despite them having the same display size and dimensions, the Moto G Stylus has a much better image quality. So if you're going to be consuming a lot of content, this is definitely going to make a difference. It also has so much more storage, with 128 gigabytes, as opposed to again, only 32 with the Ovation 3. The Moto G Stylus also has a much better camera, better performance, and a larger battery. That being said though, when it comes down to it, the real question here is which one makes the most sense to get. Now, in general, I have seen some cases where the Cricut Ovation 3 is going for full price, which is around $119, whereas the Moto G Stylus is on sale for something like $130. And if you ever see that kind of deal, then I would definitely go with the Moto G Stylus, because at the same price, the value that you're going to get for the money is going to be so much better with the Moto G Stylus. That being said though, at close to full price, or if maybe you can find the Moto G Stylus for around $130, $150, but the Cricut Ovation 3 is going for free, in that kind of situation, it really just depends on what you're doing with your phone. Because if you're going to be on it a lot and really using your device a lot, then the extra $100 or so to get the Moto G Stylus is probably going to be worth it. But on the other hand though, if you can find the Cricut Ovation 3 for free, or at least close to it, and you're really just not using your phone a whole lot, maybe you really just need something basic that works, but other than that, you don't need any fancy features, a really nice camera, nice display, anything like that, or maybe you want NFC to use tap and pay, in that kind of situation, provided you can get the Cricut Ovation 3 for significantly less, then this phone might make more sense for you. But again, if you are going to be using your phone a lot, then the price difference is probably going to be worth it, and in that case, the Moto G Stylus will be a better choice. But this concludes my comparison between the Cricut Ovation 3 and the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the video description, where I will be linking to several other videos about each of them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories, and I'll probably throw the Cricut deals in there somewhere, so definitely check for that too. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram, and as always, I will see you in the next video.